Hi, my name is Shelley Emmel with the Big Life Project. The purpose of the project is to help people focus on leading a richer, more meaningful, more joyful life. As part of the project, I'm interviewing people to find out how they do it. My guest today is Tina Berger. She's a learning consultant, a certified Kundalini yoga instructor, a wilderness rites of passage guide, a mother, and a habitual student. Tina is doing an interesting process of combining all the formal instruction she receives with growing her ability to listen more fully in the present moment. She dives deep into parts of the self and parts of life that most of us don't make much time for. And I wanted to interview Tina to talk about how she charts her path. So welcome, Tina. Thanks for being part of the project today.
Thanks for having me, Michelle. I'm really glad to be here. I'm very inspired and happy to contribute. I like the work of the Big Life Project.
Thank you. Alrighty. Well, so the first question I always ask is, name one or two things that make your life particularly meaningful or joyful that you build more fully into your life.
Okay. Let me start with joy. That has been a little elusive for me in my life. I started working as a pretty young person, about 14 years old, and kind of got in the groove of doing that. I really identified myself young as an adult, and so while I can remember a lot of joy from my younger years, I've kind of been focused and a little driven through most of my adult years, and I lost touch with that a little bit. So recently I've been asking the question of what is it that brings me the most joy, and I have a few answers, and I'm still continuing to inquire into that kind of process for myself. But certainly one of those answers is, you did mention I'm a mom, I'm a parent, and seeing my own kids in their own joy because of a peak experience, traveling or being outdoors, or even just sitting in the living room having a very giggly conversation about some goofy video or something that somebody did or said. It makes me want to run in there with the video camera and record that so that I can have it for later, because it's a very contagious thing when kids are in joy for me. Additionally, being outdoors in wild spaces, and the wilder the better. It doesn't matter if it's a desert or a forest. Those things, those kind of places where I'm wandering or lying around or completely without direction, really, it brings me a lot of joy, and I can feel that little kid-like feeling in myself of just being present, and it kind of bubbles up inside me. So those are a couple things. The other thing that's more of my current experiment is just trying to move like I did when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. So I've told you about riding my bike. I have this one-speed bike, and I take it around my neighborhood without knowing where I'm going to go. And I pump it, and I see how fast I can go, or I ride it with no hands, like I did when I was a kid, and I can really be connected with that feeling of freedom, and I'm grinning all around the neighborhood. You know, I'm not trying to get my heart rate up. I'm not trying to be aerobic. I'm not doing any of those adult things when I'm in that space, and it's been really a wonderful experience to connect with. So those are a couple things on joy. On meaning and satisfaction in my life, there's a connection for me of I've kind of come to realize that I most feel that when I am working and bringing all of my self, my deepest knowledge of myself, my gifts, into service of positive, conscious, intentional transformation, and at whatever level that can be, whether it's individuals or communities or whatever grand scale I can reach with it. And to the extent that I can do all three of those at the same time, that's my own personal little nirvana, is that work. So for me, as I come to know more about myself, I've been sort of adjusting what I do out here in my expressed being in the world to bring it more into alignment with what I most care about, which is moving things into a more positive place.
I love maybe not the combination, but at least the inclusion of both play and kind of more serious heart work. That it's not one or the other, that it really is both. It takes both of them to have the fullest life that you can. Yeah. Tina, talk a little bit, if you would, about how you came to understand that those were the things. You know, did you always know that? Did you have to work really hard for that knowledge? Did you, spend years going, no, I don't want to know that? How did you find out that those were the things for you?
Well, one big thing that I consistently do is get it wrong. So that's been really informative for me, really learning to see it, being aware enough to know that even though I think, and I have in my life spent a lot of time in my thinking space, in my head space, trying to do the right things as I can think them. And so becoming more aware of my body and my heart space and what I know in a different place besides my brain and my mind has been a big process for me. So watching what doesn't work, sitting with the pain of that without just running through it and trying to move on and trying to get positive again really quickly and blowing through it and just working harder. I have stopped and I have learned how to stop and look at what isn't working, feel what isn't working, and to try and be informed by that process. And I have collected a number of practices to help me along the way with that. And I've had great teachers in my life for yoga, for wilderness guiding, for eco-psychology and transpersonal psychology on the formal education side, but then also my kids are great teachers. Mm-hmm. My community of friends and family are great teachers for me, and a lot of them don't let me get away with crap that, that's good. I have to have people around me to call me on things that are clearly not working or I'm doing that thing again. Mm-hmm. So being willing and being able to embrace my own failings and mistakes and to learn from them and to be informed by those things, and then also to have around me and to have access to certain practices that can hold me through that challenge and people.
Tell us about a couple of the practices that so you talked about writing the book. That's obviously a play kind of practice. Sure. What are some of the other things that you're doing, either have done or are doing right now, that you found particularly useful?
So one of the most helpful things that I have done over the last few years, and I've made a lot of changes in my life in the last few years and moved some things around and changed my work, has been something that I call creating a clearing, or making space in my life for inspiration to happen. And so this has been in partnership with my family and my partner. One of the first things that we did was move into town. We were spending about 2.5 hours in transit every day in traffic, and we decided to stop losing that time. So that created some space. We also downsized the place that we were living in, so we had some financial space to make different decisions. And so those were two very kind of practical ways in which we made space. The other thing that I started doing was taking more time off from work. I was privileged enough to be in a relationship and in a place where I could do that. And so I started, instead of taking 2 or 3 days off at a time, I started taking 12 days off and doing the work of opening my own space and really trying to be with myself and feel my way into what was inspiring, what was the work I was being called to, what was the best application of my gifts, what in fact were my gifts to bring. Okay, so I started making space for that kind of work. Eventually, I reduced my responsibilities and my hours so that instead of running a company, I was working as in an independent contractor and working 3 days a week. So I had 2 days a week of space open in my life, and that has never happened to me. I've never made that decision ever since I was 14 years old to have that much time to myself to figure out what to do with. And so that kind of space, creating that sort of space, gave me a lot more flexibility and opportunity to be still. And that was that's to your next question, which is what were my challenges. But a big tool for me has been that space.
I also think it's interesting that you created the space. You had to clear the space in order to try to listen for what you were supposed to do with it. some people get a vision and then they plan backwards from that and say, I'm going to go do this. I want to sail around the world. What do I have to do in order to make that happen? What you committed to was not doing the same thing anymore, as opposed to committing to what is the new thing exactly. And so there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of unknown around that. That's
tremendously challenging for me, because I have been in my life the type of person that puts a goal out there and has a vision and then, creates the path to that and works that plan. Mm-hmm. And so, for me to really just decide to sit with space and to try and be more intuitive in how I move in the world has been wildly challenging. Yeah. And I do have some practices that I do. I have some yoga practices, I have some breathwork practices, but when you have two days a week, you're not going to fill that up with practice, nor necessarily should you. The stillness in and of itself, I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity to sit in that and to see what happens. Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned one of the other questions, which is definitely what have been some of the obstacles, and not necessarily just obstacles in the past, but obstacles now. And what do you do to overcome them?
The two challenges that have been the greatest for me have been, one, being okay with stillness, learning how to be okay with that, and to know that it is going to be valuable to me. So that my initial instincts were always to fill up that space with something else. So I would get inspired by somebody else's project and I would want to get involved with that, or I would want to fill it with exercise, or I would expand my work to take up that time. Those are my tendencies, because I'm a do person and I've been in my life less of a be person. So the challenge of sitting with stillness, the challenge of being patient with inspiration. What I did with that was I took some of that time and I experimented with different things just to see what felt good. So I experimented with taking guitar lessons. I experimented with dance lessons. I experimented with different types of play and exercise and going outside and feeling what those feelings of doing those different things brought up in me, what felt good and what felt not quite so good. And then when things were really feeling the right way in my body and spirit, I would go, okay, well, I'm onto something here, and I'd follow that thread and see where it led me. So, that's a little bit about the challenge of stillness. The other part of it was that when I did finally realize the kind of work I was being led to, which was not business transformation, not business change, not working with people to change in support of a bottom line, but working with people to change, to help support them in changes that they wanted to manifest for their own inspiration, for their own evolutionary process, however they see it. That's real heart work, and that's really different and scary, much scarier than working in a business space. So I had a lot of approach avoidance with that, and I really did feel like I was being called into work I wasn't qualified for. I know a lot more people that are much more comfortable in that heart space than I have been, which is a part of why it's important that I do it, but it's also scary, and failing at business is scary enough. That's always been scary to me, but failing at this work is 1,000 times more scary. Because A, it's my work, and B, it's related to other people's emotional process, and I really want to be good in that space. Mm-hmm. So those are, so that's taken, as far as like how I deal with that, it's taken a tremendous effort to me to become more compassionate with myself, and to know that I'm not going to be able to be as perfect as I wish I could be. I was never perfect in my work life when I was doing the head work, but being okay with that is one thing, and being okay with this is another thing. So figuring out how to love myself through this process, and to be honest about that, and to share that vulnerable space with people has taken a lot of intention from me, and it's been really good and inspiring and wonderful, but it's been a challenge.
Thinking about fear and vulnerability, you had a really terrifying experience this weekend. so not just that it was terrifying, but that, okay, here's life. It's happening right now. All your practice brings you to this place. What are you going to do with that? How does that hit your heart? How does that fit? And how do you get through that? Mm-hmm. If you talk about that would be great.
Yeah, I guess it's probably the perfect example of me being me, right? Like all that is challenging to me about who I am and all that I'm working with. But yeah, my son was in a very serious car accident over the weekend, and fortunately he got away. I mean, he rolled his car multiple times off the freeway, and no one who saw the accident or who was in that place after the accident could believe he was okay and that he walked away. The car was just completely smashed. And people stopped and helped him, and he got to the emergency room, and I wasn't too far away, fortunately. I met him there. And but I was very much in a place of taking care of things and doing things, and like I said, he ended up with 10 staples in his head, and that was it. Everything else, no broken bones or anything. But emotionally, and from the point of view of like how this hits me in a vulnerable, I was just crazy. So my process involved a lot of doing initially, running around, taking care of his prescription, making sure he got the clothes that he needed because they cut his off, making sure that, going to talk to the insurance people, going to the tow yard, doing all of those taking care of things kept me feeling busy and kept me feeling valuable to the process. Mm-hmm. And but then, all during the time that I was doing that, I could feel this emotion kind of bumping up in my heart space and into my throat, and I would kind of push it back down and take care of things. And then when I finally did, I had my 2 younger kids with me too, so I couldn't really fall apart in that space, even if it was my natural way to do that. But later on, I really sat with the fact that my son could die. That could happen, and knowing that could happen, what would I do? How do I be with that? And am I okay with how I am with that? The question of, am I gentle enough? Am I compassionate enough with him and with other people? And how does this fear of losing him connect me with my deepest, most soft, most vulnerable places, and what does that mean to my connection with other people who also have similar fears of losing a child or of losing someone else that they care deeply about and love so much. And so, there's a lot of different practices taught in Buddhism and in Shambhala tradition about leaning into these feelings and these knowings that we typically avoid because focusing on just getting somebody some pajamas and focusing on the fact that, yes, it worked out fine and he was lucky and all of those things, all of that mental dialogue that we do is only a part of the truth. The other part of the truth is that life is precious and delicate, and that we can all be gone tomorrow because of some accident, and that is a truth of life that connects us all. And so this practice is about leaning into the sharp points of that and knowing that all the time and being informed by our collective vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And so it opened me to more compassion for myself and for my son and for others, but also to questions about, am I who I want to be? Am I most myself? Am I vulnerable enough? Or am I putting it out there in that way? So I'm grateful for the experience. I'm grateful that he's okay, and I feel enriched and vulnerable by the experience.
I love what you're working on for the rites of passage. I know that's a new and scary heart work undertaking for you. Can you tell people a little bit about that, and also maybe how to find out more about that work and about you?
Yes. So that work is is really about supporting people through conscious change. You know, every once in a while, there are some things, some really sticky things that we're trying to let go of. Things that happened in our past, or things that we don't even really know why we do them. Patterns that we're in, addictive behaviors, whatever it is that we're trying to release. And then some new potential that we're really trying to step in, some new part of ourselves or some newly understood part of ourselves that we want to embody more and manifest more in our lives. And so we, unfortunately, as a country, or not as a, but as a culture, we have left a lot of our ceremonial practices for for rites of passage behind. And so, you know, what I do in my work is modern day rites of passage. It's really supporting people in kind of letting go and releasing old stuff that's no longer serving them and stepping in a new possibility. And I have a lot of different ways in which I support that. You can find out more on my website, which is www.guided-passages.com. Or you can email me. I'm happy to engage. As you can see, I'm really excited about this work, and I feel very honored and blessed to be able to do it.
Very cool. Well, Tina, thank you for adding your voice to the project today. It's been wonderful talking with you.
Thank you so much, Shelley. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
The practice of creating space or making a clearing in my life, and this has been in partnership with my own. Are you okay?
It's okay. Your beds. They want to run away. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this has been in practice, well, I'll start over. You get yourself figured out.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Total equipment failure. This could take a bit.
It looks like it's attacking.
It is. Come on. That is just way too hard.